My name is Martina Nordenson. I am currently COO of UNQUO, which is the first business offering coming out of what we call SEBx. And what is SEBx then? I mean, that is an innovation studio founded and owned by SEB, one of the biggest banks in the Nordic region. And I was part of the founding team back in 2018 when we established SEBx. And that's when I first came across Thought Machine, which is we use Vault as one of our main services to power up the platform that we built in SEBx. So since I've been part of SEBx for a few years now, I've been taking on multiple roles depending. I usually say that I've been doing things that needs to be done until someone else comes in and do it better. And luckily that happens a lot. So my role prior to this one that I have now was actually Chief People and Organization Officer for the full SEBx. So I'm super happy to be here today and discuss culture and fintechs in general.
Cool. So hey everyone, and hey Martina, nice to meet you. I'm really excited for our chat today. I'm head of recruitment and diversity and inclusion at Thought Machine. I've been with Thought Machine about 2.5 years now and seen us grow rapidly. I think when I joined, we were maybe 180 people in London, and now we are more than 500 people in 12 countries, deploying software to banks all over the world, which is super exciting. But obviously with that growth comes, as you say, Martina, a lot of challenges around, culture, engaging people globally rather than just locally in one office. And there's also, some huge challenges that come with that around diversity and inclusion, which is why I'm super excited to have taken on that part of the role of Thought Machine as well. Yes. So, what does that mean? And well, yes, it is very important, but we'll come to that after. But I think a lot of the time when people talk about inclusion, they talk about diversity and inclusion as a whole rather than, kind of two very similar and closely connected but different things. So I think both are really important here. So one is actually making sure that you actually attract and bring diverse talent to your organization. So that's the diversity piece. But that's followed up with actually making sure that diverse talent feels part of the organization. They feel included, they feel valued. People of all kinds of backgrounds get a seat at the table, and they're actually, listened to and they feel engaged and part of the organization. And I think that's sometimes the part that people miss or they put as a kind of secondary. They're really focused on, quotas and numbers and hiring diversity, but then they don't actually think about how do we really engage and make these people feel part of the culture. And I think that's something that's very important. It's important in any industry, but I think it's particularly important in fintech because, you've got a meeting of two historically very white and male industries, the tech industry and the financial services industry. And so how do you bring inclusivity to the forefront of that as we grow these organizations?
No, thank you. I mean, Natalie, I agree a lot with you, and especially on the thing you said about how do you make people actually feel like a part of the organization. And I think, recruiting a diversified workforce, that's one thing. But then it's okay, so how do you actually make the most out of that diversified workforce when you actually have it in-house? We could go out and be I want to hire a Australian girl. Okay, then I probably most likely will hire an Australian girl. But that doesn't really make the trick. It's how do I make everyone who comes into SEBx or Thought Machine or any organization really becomes the best version of themselves, and how do I create a culture and a value foundation where they can be the true self? I have an example of one thing. This is such a big and important area, and I think it's hard to find this is actually how you do it. Depends a bit on which type of organization you are, how big you are, and how you set it up. But one thing that we found out, we are 80 people, I think, overall in SEBx today, and we have 16 nationalities. We're a Swedish company, and we're running off the Swedish calendar, meaning that we celebrate Christian holidays, Christmas and Easter, and those kind of things. So that gives us, on top of our paid vacations, we get a few red days, public holidays each year, depending a bit how many, depending on if Christmas Eve is on a Saturday or a Sunday or Wednesday, but about 10 days a year. So I asked everyone with a non-Swedish background, if you were to distribute your 10 days across the year, what type of holidays would you celebrate? Nearly no one with a non-Swedish background would actually celebrate what we celebrate. Which is okay, so if we want to We want them to be the most best versions of themselves. We want them to do stuff that correlates with their culture, their beliefs, their friends and family. So what we do now is that we allow everyone to pick those 10 or 11 or 12 days that comes with every new calendar year to celebrate whatever they want. And they don't need to tell us if they're celebrating St. Patrick's Day or 4th of July or Pride or whatever. But they need to work the regular Swedish Red Day then in order to take it out. So you can kind of swap them. I think that's, I mean, it's a super tiny thing, but quite good example of trying to make everyone be equally valued in a sense and create that inclusive atmosphere. Good question. I think it's important, like when you build a culture of innovation, you need to allow for innovation to happen. With that said, you need to put aside time for actual innovation, not only executing and building. I mean, that's part of what we do. We do have company goals. We do have like stretchy goals. We do have an ambition of something we want to establish and something we want to be. But in that process, we need to allow for the teams to really explore, innovate, make mistakes. Also learning from the mistakes. So my general, house tip would be incorporate innovation and exploration into your everyday development process.
Awesome, I'd agree. And I think particularly around the mistakes mentality, I think that's really important. And I think that's probably something that we do quite well here at Thought Machine. I mean, we basically post-mortem like anything that's ever happened in the organization. And that means I think there's just a mentality around accepting mistakes and owning mistakes and learning from them rather than trying to cover them up. And again, I think that just means that people are, able to take ownership of their actions. They're able to discuss and share ideas and think about actually how could we have done this differently. And I think, that is a great way of leading to innovation, because you're just constantly, reflecting on the way the business has been built over time and looking at how you can improve and how you can change as you grow. And I guess another piece is just around, transparency as well. I think that's something that we really hold ourselves to account to across the organisation. We try to be as transparent as we can about everything. And, we host a weekly kind of debrief meeting on a Friday, which is always hosted by different members of the team from different departments, so that we're getting a lot of, clarity around what's going on across the organisation. And again, I think that transparency piece and openness just leads to, again, people sharing ideas, even informally, like over a drink or something or a coffee, rather than just in those segmented, working meetings, which is great.
I love that with the just commenting on the post-mortem, and I think when you get that rolling, I think that's a great tool if you can have it like blame-free, like blame-less post-mortem. Like you don't like, who was the issue? Like that's not the point. It's like, what was the issue? What can we learn? If you get that into your process and structure, I think you've come a far way of nurturing innovation.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the reasons, even people who don't work, haven't historically worked in financial services or haven't historically worked in tech, for some reason there's something that attracts them to the fintech industry. And I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I think, is that we are in some ways all users of the financial services industry, or the majority of us are. And, you remember the pain of, getting a check from your grandma and having to go and cash it in the branch or something like that, versus to how we now all use banks every day, remotely and digitally. So I think there's that piece where kind of as a user of a bank or a fintech, it's engaging. But I think also the fintech and financial services industry historically has really needed disruption, and it's been one of the last industries to actually be disrupted. And I think, when a lot of people think about working for a startup or a scale up, the whole piece around that really excites them is, I actually want to do something that's going to dramatically change this industry. Like thinking back to what, like Amazon did 20 years ago, to be part of that initial growth journey of something that's really going to change the market, I think really, really excites people. And so I think, for me, I think it's that, it's being at the forefront of changing the face of the industry and knowing that the work you're doing is actually really having a huge amount of value and impact.
I go. Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's. I was almost laughing when you were saying that, Natalie. Like this is one of the last big industries to going through disruption, and I think it's like about time the financial industry really went through disruption, because it's been there for so long and it's been in a current state for so long. So I think that's what make it exciting, and what you're on to. I do think, it's something that everyone uses. It's like it's a product that really everyone more or less can relate to. And the older you get and the more you kind of grow into your life, you probably use more financial products, than when you start with. So it's something like everyone can have an opinion about, everyone could, feel something about, everyone have been like disappointed or very happy about a customer client contact in the fintech industry, etc. So I think that's one. But I think in general, what keeps employees motivated and invested in the company, I think that goes for, at least my view of this is that it goes for any industry. I think that it's important that the employees understand the purpose of the company, what are we set out to do, and can align themselves somewhat with that. Like really believing in like what we're doing here, I believe in that business case, or like I really believe there's a problem to solve here. I really believe that what we're building will make a difference. And I think that difference is important. And if that might be like, I don't know, sustainable clothing, or in my world, then financial solutions for entrepreneurs, that might be one then. But I think that kind of connection becomes more and more important. At least when I speak to my parents, they've been employed in the same company for 25 years. They have never questioned the purpose. They're like, what do you mean I get paid every 25th? It's like, yeah, that's cool. I respect. But I do think that's one of the biggest major shifts in how we see our employer and the value that it provides to the individual.
Yeah, so as I say, this has been a challenge. I think, again, going from 180 people in London to 500 people across 12 different countries. And some of those people are in countries with offices, so they're working together with colleagues. Some of those people are, much more distributed in the sense that they're isolated in a particular city, selling or so on. But I think what's really key is that communication piece and that transparency piece, because I think if you're communicating with everyone across the organization consistently, they're clear on the goals and the priorities of the organization, they're clear on what's going on day to day, it really helps to feel part of that culture, even if you are remote or far away, because again, you just feel engaged, you feel that you're empowered, you feel that the organization is being kind of truthful with you. So I think for us, it's those kind of TMFs that we have on a Friday, Thought Machine Friday, where we all get together and talk about, we have different leads from different areas of the business presenting. That's all live streamed globally. So we kind of host it like a TV show, and there are people in the London office watching it, but you've got people in the US watching it, at breakfast or lunch, and then you've got people in APAC, tuning in at a later time. I think that's super important, just making sure that everyone across the business, is super engaged with what's going on, and that you're really open and really transparent, and you communicate well.
I love that TV show thing. I kind of want to take that one back.
Come along to the next one when you're in London.
Yes, please. That sounds so cool. We don't have in UNQUO and SEBx. We're all based in Stockholm, so we don't have a distributed workforce in that sense. However, obviously, we've been working remotely and from different parts. Not everyone physically located in the same office, and due to Corona, for the past 2 years, going back to normal tomorrow, which is gonna be cool, but also a bit, weird. But anyway, I think what you're saying, Natalie, transparency, communication is key. I do think also making each site, or wherever you are, feeling equally empowered and valuable to the company. So I think that's really like how you build that type of trust across the organization. We do have an initiative going on now when we're rolling back to being in the premises, that we want to have people still, we know that some people enjoy working from home or remotely. So we're going to allow for a few days a week to be working remotely, and then a few days a week to be in the office. I think it's that kind of a hybrid solution that many companies will go for now. And I think that's thanks to Corona. I don't know if I want to thank it, but if I'm going to thank it, it has to be because of this. Thanks to Corona, this is really, pressure has been put on the actual remote working situation. And what we were going to do is that we will build like a remote first setup. It's like we don't want it to matter if you're working remotely or from the physical office. You should be able to connect equally smooth. We will have screens and microphones and that kind of things all over the place. You will be able to be like remotely on the screen in front of your team 7 hours a day if you like to. So having that kind of remote first setup is something we're exploring now, and it's going to be super cool to see how that pans out.
Yeah, for sure. And just actually to add to that, Martina, because you mentioned the piece about hybrid working. So that's something we've settled on, like a hybrid model. So we have people 3 days in the office and 2 days from home, typically in the larger offices like London and Singapore and the US. And I think, that again probably comes down to that communication piece. It's great to be able to work from home, and it's great to be able to, sometimes just get your head down and crack on without having meeting after meeting. But I do think that we recognise that one of the things that was lacking was that culture piece, because it is hard. It's you can try as much as you can to try and make stuff translatable, and for people to be able to dial into stuff. But sometimes it's just not the same as being able to meet someone face to face and say have a coffee with them, or just have 3 of you in a room together having a meeting rather than dialing in all on VCs and that kind of stuff. So I think you're right that COVID has brought more flexibility to people's lives, which is amazing. But I think we recognise that actually it's super nice to have that in-person stuff too, and that's something that I think we've realised we don't want to lose.
100%, and I never think you can completely replace that. Again, to the empathy part that we were talking about in the customer calls and with the bionic workforce, I think here's like remote working is one thing and it could be super efficient, but for culture building, my personal belief is that it is easier. I'm not saying it is impossible, but it's easier if you have people in the same physical spot.